Sonia had never heard of Occoquan, but after a 1-hour flight to D.C. and a 1-hour bus ride to Virginia, she had arrived. She immediately understood why Yanni had chosen that small town. The place was so clean and perfect, it looked like a movie set. Sonia sat inside the small cafe, sipping her hot chocolate and gazing out the window at wealthy-looking residents walking from store to store doing their last-minute Christmas shopping. A strange sense of nervousness shot through her as she scanned the quaint streets for Yanni. Sonia was still surprised by how normal their phone call had gone. Like the months of silence between them had never happened at all. It was just like old times, them catching up and laughing so hard their stomachs hurt. During their short phone call, Sonia made sure to keep the conversation light, not mentioning the missing cash or Lucky's murder. They'd talk about the heavy stuff soon enough. A few minutes later, Sonia spotted a plum purple Benz pulling up to the cafe, its glossy paint job gleaming beneath the winter sun. Yanni stepped out of the Benz looking elegant and important in a long, fitted cashmere coat and a pair of leather high-heel boots. Before closing her door, Yanni gave the scene a quick once-over, like she was assessing the situation. Then she walked over to the cafe door, radiating that Yanni energy, confident, cool, and commanding attention. As Yanni stepped inside, her eyes immediately met with Sonia's. She stepped across the cafe swiftly, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor and strutting like it was her own personal runway. Sonia couldn't help but grin as she gave her friend a wave.
Girl, if you don't get up and hug me.
Yanni's voice boomed. Sonia stood, instantly wrapped up in Yanni's tight hug. They ate huge, delicious muffins and chatted about the journey Sonia had to take to get to the little town. What made you move here?
Girl, after everything that was happening, I just needed to breathe. So I went to the bus station, just wanting to get out of the city. I was going to Miami, but the sun and the beach would be good for me. But after my bus had a pit stop here, and it was just so peaceful and quiet, I decided to stay.
She smiled with a dreamy look in her eyes. So you like it?
Love it.
Yanni smiled. Sonia smiled too, but her good mood quickly faded when she remembered why she was there. The looming conversation of twins Cash was heavy on her mind as she forced a smile. Yanni continued on, catching Sonia up about her new life in the small town and the salon she had opened. With a raised eyebrow, Sonia asked, "So, was it easy for you to just move down here and open a salon?"
Yeah, it was. All thanks to my neighbor Jess and her mother. See, before I opened my shop, I was just doing Jess's hair. She was always admiring my styles, and said the salons in this town didn't know how to do black hair. So I started doing her hair out of my apartment. Then, one day her mother Fran, she's a congresswoman in D.C., she needed her hair done, like last minute. I did it. Fran loved it. Then she told all her friends about me, and I had a bunch of clients.
Yanni beamed with pride.
Jess and her mom pushed me to get my GED, my license, and then my own space.
That's so nice. Sonia smiled weakly at the unbelievable sound of the story. Then in a careful tone, she said, "But I mean, even before you started doing hair, it must have been expensive to just move down here. You said this was one of the most expensive towns in the state."
Yeah, it wasn't cheap.
Yanni sipped her latte, then stared off into space.
But it was worth it.
You were always talented, so I'm not surprised. Do you mostly do braids? Yanni laughed.
Girl, no. My clients don't want their hair braided. These ladies mostly want boring, outdated styles. But styling their hair is crazy easy, and they love it.
Those easy styles made you enough money to buy a Benz? Sonia probed.
Yep, my clients pay well. Most of them work on Capitol Hill, and the rest are married to money. So I'm able to charge a lot for that bland stuff.
Then Yanni ran her eyes over Sonia's hair, which was gelled up into a plain bun.
You should come down sometime and let me do something to your hair. I do a cute style on you, though. Nothing boring.
I think about it. Sonia smiled, nodding. But I'm so happy to hear your salon is doing so well.
I never thought something like this could happen for me. When people move here from all over the world and they need a new stylist, my clients always refer them to me. My salon is fully booked for at least 6 months. I'm thinking of opening another one just to keep up with the demand.
Sonia smiled wide and said, "You should come back to New York. Open a shop up there." Yanni's shoulders slumped slightly, her earlier enthusiasm fading as she shook her head.
I'm not going back to New York. Occoquan is my home now. You don't know how good it feels to be out of that city. Nothing but pain and drama up there.
Sonia lowered her eyes, knowing exactly what she meant. Then, taking a deep breath to prepare herself, Sonia said in a gentle tone, "Somebody murdered Lucky." Yanni's bright eyes dimmed instantly.
Murder?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, and she was pregnant. They shot her in blue, then ran in her house and stole some money, Sonia said as her eyes watered. She was about to move to Queens with Blue. He bought her a house, and she was so happy. Yanni fanned away tears. Then Sonia informed her, "Javier is trying to find the person who killed her."
Probably some people going after Blue. You know he was selling drugs with Rico and Twin?
Yanni asked in a hushed tone. Sonia nodded. That could be it, but Javier thinks it has something to do with the cash from Twin's safe. Sonia stared over at Yanni. Javier said all the money from Twin's safe went to Lucky after Twin got killed, and
What?
Yanni cut her off.
Twin got killed.
Yeah, you didn't know about it? He was killed last year, after he was released from jail. That's why he went missing. We thought he left town, but then his body was found in the water a few months later.
Y'all know who did it?
Rico and Javier know. Yanni shook her head slowly, then gave a casual shrug.
Can't say I'm surprised that somebody finally did something to that boy.
I can't believe nobody told you about any of this.
Who would I have heard it from? I don't have any friends back in New York. Only person I speak to back home is my mother. And her ear is not to the street.
Yanni laughed weakly.
You, Ab, and Lucky were my only friends.
Yanni's voice trailed off. Yanni, me and you were still friends. At least I still consider you my friend. You're the one who ran out of my house and just started ignoring me. You can still call me. Yanni smiled slightly, rolling her eyes.
I figured you and Eb never wanted to speak to me again after how I acted the night we last spoke. I was so mean to Eb that night, and she was already going through so much. I just threw her away and turned on her. Off for Twin.
Yanni said with disgust.
When you and Eb tried to show me the video, I didn't want to see it because I was afraid it was true. I convinced myself that there had to be some sort of explanation, and Twin would tell me he was drunk and out of it or something and didn't know what he was doing. But when I brought it up to him, he didn't deny a thing. I left him that same day and was so happy when I heard he got locked up. Then I saw him at the club one night, and seeing him just shook me. That's when I decided I just needed to get out of the city. Get away from everything and everybody back there that was causing me so much pain.
Yanni wiped away a small tear.
That night at the club was the last time I saw Lucky. I was so mean to her. She didn't even do anything to me.
You spoke to Eb lately? Yanni shook her head weakly.
I don't think there's any coming back from the wild stuff I said to her.
Sonia knew that was probably true. Then, like Sonia was thinking out loud, she said, "What I don't understand is why she's not speaking to me either." I believed everything she said from the very start and was trying to look out for her the whole time. But she just cut me off too, then transferred schools. I haven't heard or spoken to her since,
I hope she's all right.
Yanni said, with tear-filled eyes. Me too. I saw her profile on MySpace, and she looks happy down in Florida.
She at FAMU?
Sonia nodded. Then Yanni smiled over at her.
When I first moved down here, I always wondered if you ended up at Howard. Man, every time I went to DC, I'd be looking around hoping to see you. But you staying back in New York and going to Columbia now?
Yanni shook her head in disbelief.
Please don't tell me you did that to stay close to Rico.
Yanni, Rico was deported almost a year ago, Sonia chuckled. He's down in Cartagena, and we broke up.
Sonny, how are you just now mentioning this?
Sonia shrugged.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I know how much you loved him.
Trust me, I'm good, Sonia said, shaking her head. I'm happy to be done with him. And I'm even happier he's thousands of miles away. Like you said, being away from them just feels so much better.
Good for you. Because there's no happy endings with dudes like them. Twin and Rika were not knights in shining armor sent to rescue us. All they did was bring a bunch of pain and destruction.
Then, with her perfectly manicured hand, Yanni pulled back the sleeve of a cashmere coat, glancing down at her watch.
Sonny, it was so nice seeing you. But I got an appointment with a client soon, so I need to head out. I was serious about doing your hair, though. Come down, let me hook you up.
Sonia gave her a nod.
Or just come down and we can hang out. I can show you all around my new city.
Definitely. Before Yanni could collect her purse and stand from the table, Sonia asked, "Do you know who else knew about the money in Twin safe?"
Nope. But he was always running his mouth. So who knows?
She shrugged, sliding her purse onto her shoulder.
I really hope Javier finds whoever did that to Lucky, though.
Yanni, Javier wanted to know if you had something to do with it.
If I had something to do with it.
She asked, offended.
Killing my friend?
He said the cash went missing from Lucky's house after the murder, and only a few people knew about the money in Twin safe. He said you were one of them. Yanni pulled the bag off her shoulder, settling back into her chair.
Yeah, I knew about it, but I didn't have anything to do with Lucky getting shot or the cash going missing.
I know you didn't, Sonia assured her. But he's looking for you, and I think you should speak to him. Just let him know you didn't have anything to do with it. Yanni shook her head quickly.
I'm not talking to him about nothing. I didn't have anything to do with it, and I don't owe Javier no explanations.
Fear filled Yanni's eyes as she twiddled her thumbs nervously.
Sonny, please do not tell that boy you saw me. And please don't tell him where I live.
I won't, but if you don't speak to Javier, he's just gonna keep looking for you. Yanni just stared at Sonia nervously, with a sinking feeling in her stomach. Barely 1 week after meeting up with Yanni, the always quick and efficient Nate stopped by Sonia's house with an update. I told you didn't have to come all the way out here on Christmas Eve. Sonia laughed as he stepped inside.
It was nothing.
He tried saying it with a smile, but his expression remained serious. Why didn't you want to just wait and meet up on Monday?
Because I want to give you an update before I take my information to the cops.
She looked at him with concern. Then the two walked up the hall to the living room. Sonia sat on the sofa stiffly, staring over at Nate. The lights of the Christmas tree cast in a soft glow across his features as he spoke in a gentle yet serious tone. He explained in cases like Lucky's, it was almost always the spouse. So he looked into Blue first. Nate pulled out some pictures he snapped of Blue over the last few days. Sonia's eyes watered and her heart filled with rage as she looked down at photos of Blue standing outside of that cute little house Lucky had shown her a few months ago. He was walking into the house with some girl who was very pregnant. The two holding hands and smiling like some happy little family. Tears blurred her vision as Nate explained that Blue had been making lots of purchases in the last few months, buying a car, along with quickly paying off the house. The photos shook in Sonia's hands as she stared at Blue, smiling and rolling a stroller up the walkway. Then Nate announced that it was only circumstantial evidence and wasn't enough to have Blue arrested. But it was enough for the cops to take a closer look at him and find out if he was involved. A few hours later, Javier showed up to Sonia's house looking annoyed and agitated.
What's up?
He asked, his eyes scanning the block. Sonia stepped back, letting him in. Then she announced, I got some info about Lucky's killer. As they walked up the hall, Sonia explained, I hired a PI to look into her murder and the missing cash, and he told me Blue's been spending crazy money lately.
How much money?
Enough to pay off a house in Queens and buy a new car. Sonia handed him the photos. They folded her arms over her chest. He's got a whole family on his side. Javier shuffled through the photos, his face heated up and turned red with each new photo he saw. Sonia's voice shook. He had a whole nother life. He killed Lucky and his own baby, then took the money. I know it. That's why he only got shot in the arm of all places. With the photos still in his grip, Javier said,
If you see Blue, don't say nothing to him. Just call me or Rico.
Blue probably won't be in the street for too much longer. The investigator took the info to the cops, so hopefully he'll be arrested soon.
Why did he take this to the cops? I could have taken care of it.
He had to go to the police. If Blue did kill Lucky, that girl he's with could be in danger right now. Javier didn't speak, but Sonia could feel the rage radiating off of him. Then, without responding, Javier headed up the hall toward the door. Sonia stood in the living room, a heavy feeling hanging over her, like she just knew this was going to be the calm before a very violent storm. Chapter 5. A blizzard hammered down on the city, burying parked cars in snowdrifts and turning sidewalks into impossible obstacle courses. The news said it was the worst snowstorm New York had seen in years. But there they were, Javier and Blue, braving the storm and driving through the unplowed streets, the only car on the road. Javier gripped his steering wheel, fighting the slickness of the pavement. His wipers slapped uselessly against the windshield, struggling to clear the snow. He kept his eyes fixed on the road, or what he could see of it through the white blur. The air was thick with swirling flakes, and he could barely see a few feet ahead. Blue sat in the passenger seat uneasy. He wanted the job working for Javier's uncle, but having to meet up and travel in the blinding storm seemed like it wasn't worth it. He was sitting there, wrapped up in his bulky bubble coat, with a radiator blasting against his face like a furnace, causing him to sweat. Blue wiped away the wetness from his forehead, then cleared his throat and said,
Thanks again for hooking me up with your uncle. After things fell through with Rico, money been real tight.
Javier couldn't muster up any fake kindness, and his tone remained hard and flat.
That new house you bought Lucky must have cost a lot of money.
Blue's smile faded.
It was.
So why don't you sell it?
What?
You bought it for Lucky and the baby, right?
Javier asked, glancing over at him.
Now that it's just you and your money's tight, why don't you just sell it?
Yeah, I guess I could. But now, I'm gonna be getting some cash flow since you put me on with your uncle.
Blue smiled for a second, but after seeing Javier's hard expression, he wiped the smirk from his face.
So what exactly am I gonna be doing for your uncle? Lucky never gave me no details. She just said y'all was getting money.
We'll talk about it in a minute. Don't like to talk business in the car. Never know who could be listening.
Blue gave him an understanding nod.
How your arm feeling?
Javier asked.
It's alright. Still a little sore, but I'm good.
Javier finally looked over at him.
It's still crazy to me that you only got shot in the arm while Lucky took a shot to the head.
Yeah, I still don't know how I made it out alive. It's been haunting me every night.
And you think it was those kids from Trinity Avenue?
Javier pressed.
Yeah, probably. But I'm not for sure.
It was probably those kids. Them boys don't play.
Then, Javier spoke in the most friendly tone he could.
I say we go visit them. Take a look around. See if you recognize anybody.
For what? I told you they was all wearing masks.
Right?
Blue glanced over at Javier, who was gripping the steering wheel way too tightly as he drove them down a deserted street near the pier. On their right was a long row of abandoned factories, their windows dark and empty, like vacant eyes staring out into the storm. The whole scene had Blue on edge. He knew something wasn't right. As his heart hammered against his chest, he wiped away even more slick sweat from his skin, then looked over at Javier, searching his expression. But as usual, Javier's face was a mask, hard and unreadable.
I thought you said we was going to meet up with your uncle.
Javier stared straight ahead, saying simply,
We are. You know, with this kind of business, it's not easy to find a safe place to talk. Down here, we don't have to worry about bugs or surveillance.
Blue glanced over at him suspiciously, but forced an understanding nod. The silence stretched as the wind roared and the tires crunched under the thick, undisturbed snow. Then, breaking the silence, Blue announced,
Some detectives came by my house the other day.
Word? For what?
They told me they suspected I had something to do with Lucky's murder.
Why they think that?
They said a PI had some evidence against me.
He stared over at Javier.
What kind of evidence?
I didn't kill Lucky, so they were probably just bluffing, trying to pin it on me.
Yeah, That's what they do.
Right. And I still don't know who would have even hired a PI to look into me.
Me either.
Javier said coolly.
But if you didn't do it, you ain't got nothing to worry about, right?
Yeah, I do. Because they looking into the money I used to buy the house, saying they want to know where it came from.
Where did it come from?
Puerto Rico.
Blue said it like he should have known. Javier nodded slowly, receiving the final confirmation he needed. Rico told him months ago that Blue is complaining about his pay after putting $40,000 down on the house. After Rico's business was drying up, Blue called him crying, talking about how he needed to get some cash soon, or he was going to miss his payment and risk losing the house. Now that P.I. was saying the $400,000 house was all of a sudden completely paid off.
But you ain't talked to the cops about where you got the money, did you?
Nah, I ain't no snitch.
He said with pride.
They want to investigate it though. And I'm worried I messed up by putting up so much money on a down payment for that house. But your uncle should be able to make it look legit for me, right?
Javier gave him a simple nod.
How was he able to do that? He must got some crazy connections.
Not in the car.
Javier reminded him.
Right.
Blue nodded, leaning back onto the headrest. As Javier pulled up beside one of the abandoned factories, Blue's eyes scanned the dark, shadowy landscape anxiously.
Where's your uncle?
He should be there.
Javier gestured toward the factory with hard eyes.
I don't see no tire tracks or lights. I don't think he's here yet.
Blue shook his head nervously.
He probably came in the back. Come on.
Javier said with sharp impatience. Blue gave him a nod, but instead of getting out of the truck, he remained glued to his seat, his hand inching toward his waistband. Javier's focused eyes caught the movement, and without hesitation, he was on Blue immediately, lunging over for Blue's arm before he could pull out the gun completely. Then the cramped space of the truck exploded in violence as Javier wailed down on Blue, unleashing a flurry of heavy pounds to his face as images of Lucky flashed in his mind. Blood sprayed across the dashboard as Javier's fist connected with Blue's nose, the wet crunch echoing through the truck. Blue had still been fighting to get his hand on his gun, but Javier's fist raining down on his face was too much, and instead, he started working on simply getting away. So when Javier slammed his face against the passenger window, Blue grabbed the door handle and was able to jump out. Out of desperation, he dove out onto the snowy ground, hitting the icy pavement with a thud. He scrambled to his feet, then turned at the waist, firing wildly over his shoulder as he ran away. Javier slammed the truck into drive, the tires spinning and spitting snow as it lunged forward. The headlights cut through the swirling snow, illuminating Blue's fleeing figure. Then, with Javier's right hand on his steering wheel, he pulled out his gun with the left. Reaching out the window, pulling the trigger, and sending loud cracks of gunfire throughout the desolate area. Unable to aim and drive in the slippery snow, none of his shots hit Blue. Instead of shooting, Javier focused on the gas, his engine roaring as he aimed for Blue. But before Javier could reach him, Blue ducked for cover inside of a building. Javier stepped into the familiar, decaying building, the cold metal heavy in his hands, as his finger rested lightly on the trigger. As he slowly rounded a corner, he could hear the hurried clatter of Blue's footsteps echoing in the distance, the sound growing fainter as Blue ran further into the shadows. The thought of going after Blue briefly crossed Javier's mind, but as his eyes scanned the building's dark interior, he knew he'd only be stepping into a trap. Too many hiding places for Blue and not enough coverage for him. He would have to take care of Blue another day, and he was positive he wasn't going to miss. One Monday, 2 days after the big blizzard swept through, the city was now covered in a thin layer of dirty snow. Sonia had trekked through the slush-covered sidewalks and was just arriving to work at 4 p.m. She stepped over to the reception desk, telling Jasmine all about her first day of freshman orientation. Her words filling the air with excitement. Then, out the corner of her eye, she noticed Javier stepping through the door. And that's when everything went crazy. Out of nowhere, a shower of bullets shattered the windows, sending glass raining down. The office erupted in chaos as people ducked beneath their desks, scrambling for cover. But as Sonia's panicked co-workers threw themselves onto the floor, she was frozen still, standing there spaced out in the middle of a war zone. The sound of raw gunfire ripped open a wound she thought she'd healed, transporting her back to the night of horror. The night her world had been shattered by the same brutal symphony of violence. As the bullets flew, a gust of freezing wind rushed through the shattered window. Then Sonia felt a warm, strong hand on her arm that broke the spell. Javier tugged at her, yanking her back into the present and down onto the floor. His eyes had a protective intensity as he pulled her against him, shielding her body with his own. Sonia huddled against his chest, shaking with fear as the sound of gunfire finally stopped. After hearing the screeching of tires, people slowly rose to their feet. Everybody stumbling over each other, dazed and panicked. But Sonia remained frozen on the floor, still trembling.
Sonny, are you okay?
Jasmine asked, wiping away tears. But Sonia didn't answer. Javier knelt beside her, his face covered with concern.
Sonny, you shot?
He asked, his voice rough with worry. She shook her head slowly, with wide, glassy eyes, but didn't move from the floor until Rita came over, shaking Sonia's shoulders and pleading with her to get up. Then as the sirens approached in the distance, they rushed Sonia outside to Rita's car, where she instructed Javier to take Sonia home. Gloria was confused when Javier showed up with a disheveled-looking Sonia. Then she almost lost it when he explained that there had been a shooting at work. She forced herself to hold it together when she saw the scary, dazed look in her daughter's eyes.
Sonny, are you okay?
She been like this since the shooting.
Sonny.
Gloria grabbed Sonia's chin, staring into her eyes. I'm okay, Ma, Sonia said, sounded like a little robot. After Javier left, and Gloria had moved Sonia to her bed, she flicked on the news. As Gloria listened to the news, receiving no real information, her stomach tightened. Having to endure any more tragedy or pain felt like it would be too much for her heart to take. Rita and Louise showed up to Sonia's house later that night, looking worried and anxious. The four of them sat in the living room as the couple apologized for the incident. Gloria's brow furrowed. Then she asked, with her voice all filled with concern.
But who would want to do something like that?
Louise shrugged with a sigh.
Things are getting so bad around here, it's hard to tell. Probably just a shootout on the street, and our office got caught in the crossfire.
Gloria frowned.
Growing up here in the 70s was rough. This neighborhood was all burned out. Then they started to rebuild and put up these houses. Me and my husband felt so blessed to have a chance to live here. See things change for the better. But now things are out of control. A lot worse than when I was younger.
The couple nodded in agreement. Then Louise said,
I'm gonna make sure things change around here. It's not gonna be easy, but I'm making it my mission.
Gloria smiled weakly, allowing a little hope to fill her heart. Then, as Rita wrung her hands nervously, she announced,
We're going to our house in the Hamptons tonight, just to get away from the city and get a little peace. We wanted to see if Sonia would like to come. She was so distraught earlier. I don't think she'll be in any shape to attend orientation tomorrow. And of course, you're invited to come too.
Gloria glanced over at Sonia, who was staring ahead blankly.
Thanks, but I think she needs to be at home at a time like this.
Then finally, Sonia spoke up. I want to go. After Sonia went into her room to pack a bag, Gloria walked Louise and Rita to the door.
I really hate that Sonia had to go through this again. She's already been through so much,
Rita said in a whisper. Gloria nodded.
Me too. But I appreciate you guys looking out for her like you are. Getting her home, then inviting us out to your house in the Hamptons.
Gloria looked over at Louise.
And I'm sorry for how I spoke to you when you came by our house last year. I honestly thought you were here to use my daughter for your campaign. But I see now that you really do care. I appreciate all of this. You two have been a godsend.
Gloria and Sonia stared out the window as Louise's BMW pulled into the driveway. Through the darkness, the cottage was just a dark silhouette against the starless black sky. But as the headlights swept across it, they were able to get a glimpse of its massive size. Upstairs, Gloria unpacked her daughter's things while Sonia climbed into bed, curling up beneath the heavy comforter. Gloria lined up the toiletries all nice and neat on the vanity. The whole scene was giving her deja vu, like she time traveled back to the summer of Sonia and Gary's shooting. Back when she had become Sonia's home health aide, all wrapped up in keeping her daughter safe and comfortable. Gloria let out a painful sigh, glancing back at Sonia, who still had that creepy blank look in her eyes. Reminded Gloria of the days following the shooting, when Sonia wouldn't say anything at all. Just endless days of quiet. The only sound in the hospital room was the TV and the pulsing beeps of medical equipment. Gloria stared out the bay window at the dark, pitch-black ocean, where a small glimmer of the crescent moon reflected on the water's surface. Trying to lighten the mood, Gloria smiled, then said,
This place is so nice.
It is, Sonia said flatly. Ma, you don't have to do that. I can unpack later.
I don't mind.
Gloria said, placing Sonia's clothes into a drawer.
You feeling any better?
Yeah, I just need to get some sleep. With that, Gloria gave Sonia a nod, then left out, flipping off the lights and closing the door. Once alone, Sonia pulled the heavy blankets over her head, cocooning herself in the warm, dark solitude. Overnight, it was like someone had flipped a switch. The next morning, Sonia was no longer shuffling around like a zombie. Now she was bubbly and talkative at the breakfast table, like she was radiating sunshine. Her eyes sparkled brightly as she devoured the fancy French toast Rita had ordered. Meanwhile, Rita and Gloria were exchanging glances of relief and curiosity as Sonia sat in transformation. After breakfast, Sonia wandered into the den where she found Javier on the couch, tapping away at his phone. She flopped down beside him, still bubbly and full of energy, as she asked, "When did you get here?"
Last night,
He replied, finally looking her way. Her new peppy tone and bright smile had him puzzled.
seemed like you're doing a lot better today.
"I am." Then he said in a tone laced with concern,
What happened with you at the office? You just stood there, right in the middle of all that shooting.
Her smile faded slightly. "When I heard those shots, it was like I just blacked out." Then, with a smirk creeping back into her face, she quickly added, "But like I said, I'm feeling a lot better today." "You want to know why?" He nodded. "I had a dream about Jesus." Seeing her wide smile made him smile slightly too.
A dream about Jesus.
"At least, I think it was him," she said with a strange, far-off gaze, like she was focused on her thoughts. Javier stared at Sonia, trying to figure her out. Then, completely changing the subject, she asked, "Where's Louise?"
Back in the city.
Javier said simply, returning his focus to his phone. Sonia's gaze drifted around the den, taking in her fancy surroundings, as the weak winter sun made the den glow softly. Everything in there was beautiful and looked ridiculously expensive. The elegant decor and fancy furnishings reminded Sonia of Rico's place in Colombia. Now, she didn't know much about the Hamptons, just the stuff she'd seen on TV. But she understood. This was a place where the wealthiest New Yorkers lived. She waited a minute, letting the silence stretch. Then she asked, "Did your uncle's office getting shot up have anything to do with that side business you twin and Rico were doing?" He looked over at her with a harsh stare.
No. Blue shot up the office.
"What?" Sonia asked with shock. "Why would he do that?"
I tried to handle things the other night, but it didn't work out. Now Blue is coming after me.
"What do you mean you tried to handle things?" Javier didn't speak, just shot her a look. "The PI went to the cops. They're building a case. It's only a matter of time before they put Blue away."
Waiting for the cops to handle it means letting Blue walk the streets for months, maybe even years. You do know these investigations take time. Just because they're looking into it, don't mean he'll be off the streets instantly.
"Yeah, I know that. I'm not stupid, Javier," Sonia snapped. Then the thought of Blue being free and on the streets really sank in. "You think the cops told Blue's girl what's going on?" Javier shrugged. "We should reach out to her in case they didn't.
Don't say nothing to that girl.
She could be in danger, just like Lucky was."
Man, she probably ain't innocent in all this. She could have been in on it with Blue.
"No, she couldn't be okay with something like that. She's pregnant herself,"
You never know with people nowadays.
Javier said flatly. You just said that Blue can be out free for months or years. We can't just keep this to ourselves.
You trust people too much. You need to smarten up and start being more careful.
Sonia could sense that he wasn't just talking about reaching out to Blue's girl either. Then Javier continued.
If you say anything to her, you should just call up Blue and let him know that you've been sticking your nose in his business. Then you'll really be in danger. And not just you, your mom's too.
Sonia lowered her eyes, her mind running wild with all the dangerous possibilities. Then, with the cool return to his voice, Javier said, in the closest attempt at a confident tone,
Just talk to your PI. Tell him to get the word to her somehow. But you need to stay away.
Sonia was silent, her eyes still glued to the plush Persian rug.
Sonny, are you hearing me?
Javier asked sternly. Yes, she sighed. He shook his head slightly as the tension finally eased from his shoulders. Then the air between them seemed to lighten as Javier's mood shifted from intense anger to a quiet calm. He glanced over at Sonia as she wiped away a tiny trickling tear.
You all right?
She nodded. I still don't see how Blue could do this to Lucky and his own baby.
Because he's sick.
Sonia nodded. Lucky never should have did that love spell. When she realized he wanted to leave her, I wish she would have just let him go.
What you talking about, love spell?
Lucky went to that witch Rico used to see, trying to keep Blue, and she taught Lucky some love spells. Lucky loved him so much, she wanted to do anything to keep him. Javier let out an annoyed sigh.
That stuff Rico and Lucky was into wasn't real. You can't blame magic for what Blue did.
I'm not saying the magic made him a murderer. I'm just saying that after he tried to leave Lucky, she never should have did those spells to keep him. She should have just let him go. Then her tone lowered as she said with a mix of sadness and shame, I went to their bruja because I wanted to communicate with my father. Javier's gaze met hers. He got killed a year ago, and I missed him so much. I went to that witch trying to speak to him one last time. That's how I know it's real.
Your father spoke to you?
He asked with hesitation. No, I didn't get to hear from him because all those witches can do is conjure up a bunch of demons, not dead people. I didn't get anything I wanted. But Rico and Lucky always did. They made deals with the devil, and in the end, he made her pay. I tried to tell Lucky that. To Sonia's surprise, when she looked over at Javier, he wasn't staring at her like she was completely insane. Instead, it looked like he somehow believed her. Then he asked,
You tell Rico this yet? About having to pay in the end?
She shook her head. He wouldn't listen to me even if I tried. Silence fell between them. Then, like magic, Javier's phone began to ring.
It's Rico. He's been calling ever since the shooting, trying to catch up with you.
He held his phone out to Sonia, but she wouldn't take it.
You should talk to her. He was worried after I told him how you zoned out yesterday.
I don't want to talk then, she said simply. With that, Javier gave her a nod and pressed ignore. He looked over at her, speaking in a kind tone again.
Tell me your dream about Jesus.
And so she did, with that same radiant smile she had before, speaking with passion, as Javier looked on like it was the most interesting thing he'd ever heard.